Okay, thank you very much for joining me today, Zette. My little intro is going to be, can you just tell everyone what your name is and kind of what you do, and then we will just get things going from there.
Yes, I'm Zette Harbour. I'm a human design advisor and guide. I'm also a certified professional coach. And for about 3 decades, I was a traditional professional storyteller, which meant I focused solely on traditional folklore from around the world, particularly drawn to the archetypal stories that
Nice.
revealed the universal human themes of that we all experience, but in a really non-ordinary context.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I was going to be like, how the heck did you get from being whatever you started off in life to being a storyteller and human design person? Because that's got to
100%.
be, if you're a storyteller, there's got to be a cool story behind that, right?
Exactly, exactly. There we go. Yeah, so I have no idea how I became a storyteller
Okay.
because it was sort of I was moving through life. I fell into it and I went, wow, this is a thing. Uh,
Hmm.
and later, very like 5 years ago when I was introduced to human design, looking at my Saturn return coincided exactly with the time that I sort of emerged into this new part of my life. So it's really fascinating to look back and recognize that even though it seemed very serendipitous and just completely unexpected, when you look at the themes of the Saturn return, it makes a lot of sense. But essentially, I had been in therapy for about 3 years and had been introduced to Carl Jung and archetypes and dream interpretation and all kinds of things. And I had always loved folklore as a child. And so I started experiencing folklore that I was reading to my daughter, who was like 4 or 5 at the time, and having these realizations. Wow, this is so archetypal. And particularly, it was the
Mhm.
story of Rumpelstiltskin. I don't know if you're familiar with
Whoa.
that one.
I had just talked to someone a couple weeks back, and the one that we brought up was Rumpelstiltskin, so that's cool.
Wow, yeah, there are no accidents, right?
Yeah.
Rumpelstiltskin is an extraordinary tale. It tells such an amazing story of our own inner part of us that brings us to these places where we create without knowing how. But she has to be broken down and crying and afraid for her life and her father's life
Yeah.
before that can come to her. So it really tells that story of how often life has to break down or fall apart for us to sort of almost be like opened, against our own will, right? To
Yeah.
this extraordinary, mysterious force that can spin the ordinary straw of life into the gold of our wisdom, right? And she does pay him. And then finally, she has to promise him her future offspring, her future creation, which he then comes to collect. And it's in finally being able to name him that she becomes liberated and able to stay as the sovereign of her own life, as the queen of the land, right? And in
Yeah.
the story, it talks about him getting so angry that he, splits in two or pounds his feet so hard that he disappears into the earth. But these are all ways of describing him dissolving
Yeah.
into her, into us, that part of us dissolving into us. So now, once you've gone through that initiation and become the sovereign of your life, then you no longer have to reach the point of existential fear, in order to access that extraordinary genius that lets you take the straw of your life and turn it into some gold.
Right on. Yeah, I want to keep going, but I'm like, okay, if I keep getting the story of Rumpelstiltskin being thrown into my face,
Yeah.
maybe it means that we should analyze it a little bit more because we did already talk, just kind of like touched on those like key points that you brought up, the main beats of the story. But then I'm like, oh, we did kind of like mention what the spinning was, because I was saying there might be something about the spinning representing femininity or something like that. But when you talked about, because I haven't read the story in a while, but turning it into gold, I immediately think of alchemy, which Carl Jung went deep into psychology and the connection with alchemy, as if alchemy itself, whatever it was just this big archetypal mythology about the unconscious mind. So there's got to be something going on there, right? And then I was like, okay,
Absolutely.
if it's something that like you had said dissolved back into you, that kind of reminds me of like a projection that's, or a split part of your personality being brought to integrate,
Yeah.
or that fundamental concept of the shadow, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And, you're reminding me even earlier in the story, how did she get in this situation? Her father tells a lie in order to make himself more important to the king. And, on an ordinary reality level, it's easy for us to go, oh, that's a bad dad and da da da.
Yeah.
When the reality is, if you, as I do, see all of these characters as living inside me, my inner father energy, because it did not feel and developed enough in its own experience of its worth, had to sort of inflate what it could deliver to my inner king, right? And that
Hmm.
makes total sense, especially when we're younger and we just really haven't figured out who we are or why we're here or what it is we do have to offer. And so it is that mistake or even, character defect of that father energy that lands her in a situation where the king says, I mean, look at this king energy, right? He's like, I'm going to lock you in this room overnight by yourself, room full of straw that you had no control over choosing how much. I'm going to lock the door. And if you don't do it by morning, I'm going to kill your father.
Yeah.
Like, what an intense situation to be put into, right? And so that level of fear for one's father energy, right? That which is sort of very protective, even though in her case, he was also kind of an idiot, maybe,
Yeah.
or weak, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for you, I don't know where that lands for you, but if you see each of these as part of you, including the woman, the girl, right? Each of us have that youthful, maiden, innocent energy that is incredibly receptive, that is also potentially naive about the way the world actually works, and is at the effect of the parts of us that do tell us they're in charge. Our father energy says, I'm in
Hmm.
charge. The king energy, oh, I'm not only in charge, I control life or death. Right. So we have these places within us constantly enacting these stories. And yeah, so the more we can, I feel, come heart to heart in a very conscious awareness way, then the more I just simply greet them each, with an embrace and acceptance and appreciation and love, because they're all here to support me in the eventual mutative alchemical transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that you're saying awareness because it's another thing that keeps coming back to me lately when I meditate on this stuff is the idea basically that, look, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to just simply be aware of who you are
Mhm.
and that there's not like a lot that you need to just like force and to change about yourself. That the more conscious you are of what's going on in your psyche, the more things automatically begin to harmonize themselves. Do you know what I'm saying? As if I really liked on the other hand, like the alternate side of that would be that when you're not aware and when you're someone who's kind of like more blinded, ignorant, or has less consciousness, which is not like a judgment. It's just like that's the beginning of the journey, and it means you have like further to go to see more. That more forces can begin to act upon you when you're not aware. It's almost like you give them more. I know I'm speaking about this very vaguely, but hey, that's archetypes for you people. Do you know what I mean? So like, let's say you have a small awareness, but you're a bigger circle. What you're doing is you're giving space for forces and energies to kind of do what they want with you, however you want to look at that. But the more you fill that with awareness, it's like you're shining light on the demons in the closet. You're shining the light, and you can laugh at them. You can understand them for what they are, and like knowing the true name, understanding what something is makes them scatter.
100% beautifully described. I mean, she is actually going through that exact process, right? She doesn't know the shadow side of these powerful figures in her life, her father or the king, right? And her naivete or her ignorance of the shadow of that is what lands her in this really, kind of kettle of hot water, right?
Yeah.
And it is through the naming, which I would, relate to what you've described, which is that conscious awareness. It is her journey through the conscious awareness when she finally comes to the clarity that can be expressed as a name, that is where she claims her full power. And that's why he's no longer necessary for her to fulfill her life as the sovereign, or her role as a sovereign of her life. So
Yes.
I agree with you. The more we are ignorant of these characters, or the more we demonize or villainize these
Hmm.
characters, the more they have to struggle against us to show us the truth, right? If she had not named Rumpelstiltskin, he would have taken her firstborn child. The
Yeah.
suffering that would have come from that would have been horrendous, right? So we all, the greatest joy and fulfillment comes when we do come heart to heart with conscious awareness that that father part of me isn't bad, right? There was a whole thing going on. Without him, she would never have even had this opportunity to transform, right? So all of the parts of me that seem to be villains, including Rumpelstiltskin, are actually just tricksters doing their part to create that alchemy.
Yeah, because you could almost say that the process of movement needs some kind of catalyst to move things forward. So
Of
you need
course.
the antagonist in the story to exist to
Yeah.
make the protagonist have something to do. You know what I mean? It's almost like the hero, wouldn't have a point in existing if it wasn't for the antagonist in the first place.
Yeah.
And that I also thought, I imagined, like when I was a little kid, when there was it would be dark, like the lights go out at night, and then I always imagined that there was just something in my closet. But for some reason, if I kept it kind of like mysterious and like I don't know what it is, it's just some kind of like monster in there. It's way more scary than if like I was just looking directly at it and be like, oh, okay, so you're this tall, you look like that. Do you know what I mean? Like something when you narrow it down, but then that mysterious unknown force, it just kind of like fills itself with that nameless fear.
Yeah, I like to think of the physical analogy of like casting shadows. I also find that it's interesting that in the story Rumpelstiltskin, the final messenger sees Rumpelstiltskin dancing around a fire and, of course, casting shadow on, like a cliff nearby kind of thing. Because if you look at the shadow that potentially, let's say this story, Rumpelstiltskin's shadow is cast on a wall, you look at that shadow, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
It's not even like you can't tell the outline is there, but what does that outline mean? Whereas you look down then again at the source of the shadow is just tiny little, very strange, sort of glittery man. You're like, oh. And the beauty of shadows is that there is always light. You
Yeah.
cannot have a shadow without light. And that the light is the actual thing that's generating this whole process. Like the shadow is just a shape that gets to be put in to obstruct the light just enough that we look at something and it gets our attention. But really, if we come back to that light, then we don't, the shadow doesn't have a job anymore.
That reminds me of remember in The Wizard of Oz when they go in to finally meet him and it's I am the great and terrible Oz and they're like, who's that little guy back there? And then he's just
Exactly.
this little real man, the
Yeah.
whole aura had just been like the bubble had burst at that point.
Right. You see behind the curtain. And I think,
Mhm.
that is true for all parts of ourselves. And if we can do it with something I call kind curiosity, right? It's like being this curious, but not to know it and like pin it down and like fix it, but this kind curiosity that says, I'm interested in you. Tell me your story.
Mhm.
So I want these parts of me to tell me their story. And when I let them tell me their story, guess what? They don't have to be giant, scary shadows.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I also have another pattern I think about lately of, you can teach people a million abstract ideas,
Mhm.
but our brain loves when something is pulled along the thread of
Yeah.
a story that it connects everything. Our brain finds all these connections between things. We love everything to be characters. So it's easier to give people truth in the form of a story. Like even in my work that I do, one of the, techniques that you can use is instead of saying to someone, you need to change your life in
Yeah.
like some generic way, here's what you should do. A lot of people, what they do is they've practiced so long coming up with, well, no, but then they have an excuse and they've built up the defenses against that for so long that what you do is you got to find a way to get around it in a coy way. So, in a friendly and loving way, is you
Mhm.
go, well, okay, I'm just going to tell you a story then. So it's not like I'm giving you information and it is now you must choose to accept or reject it. You
Yeah.
don't think of it that way. And then you just start telling them basically like a fairy tale style of story, but
Mhm.
you weave it in such a way that they start to go, well, that kind of reminds me of myself. He didn't say it was me,
Yeah.
but I can really see myself in that story of the sheep. Or you know what I mean? It'll be something ridiculous. And it can be the beauty of a story is that it can be anything and it can even be funny and stupid at the same time. But the
Mhm.
metaphor, we seem to absorb it before we can criticize it.
Yeah.
And I love the universality of how like what I'm doing is really just like it's nothing new, nothing special. It's the magic of storytelling.
You nailed it. I mean, our brains are wired for story. And it's not just the brain, because the brain is actually synthesizing all of the information that's going up the vagus nerve that's coming from the body. And stories, I mean, you cannot tell someone a story of the most delicious meal you ever ate without their body going, "Ooh, I'm
Yeah.
hungry. That
Yeah.
smells good. I can taste it." So stories actually provide so much sensory stimulation that we're pretty, I think, don't even realize that that is why it seeps in before the rational intelligence has a chance to like start chipping away and knocking it down. Because our
Mhm.
lived experience is, for the most part, is undeniable. You can't deny that you're hurt, that that hurts. You can't, I mean, you can
Yeah.
try.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, if it hurts, it hurts. If it tastes good, it tastes good. If it you feel full, you feel full. These are things that the rational intelligence really has no armor against and no weapons to use to to kind of deconstruct. So then the rational mind pivots and starts creating lists of evidence to try and create, like, they become a lawyer and it starts to create a case to like convince you, despite, and which I think, we've all experienced that state where we have let our rational intelligence talk us out of our lived truth. And that's where we start, going into denial and experiencing repressed energies in the various parts of our body, which certainly over time affect the flow of the life force and the health of our body.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Um, I'm just gonna, 'cause my brain blinked, I'm going to immediately pivot into going, now let's suddenly talk about human design. And how can we move from there to here? From
Oh
here
no,
to
you're
here.
brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I was already like going, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
sweet.
what human design helps us do is we now have just kind of a very mechanical map of places where we are most likely to bury those lived experiences, to deny them. And when we understand which places we're most likely to have kind of stuffed them into the cupboard, and like hid them
Yeah.
in the attic, well, then you know where to find them. And human design also tells you the places where you were less likely to have other people impose their thoughts and beliefs onto you. It doesn't mean they can't, but it's less likely. And then you start to understand, oh, I've got, this gate, this channel, this energy. Like for you and me as self-projected projectors, we have at least one channel going from the G center to the throat. Therefore, the consistent, reliable sort of imprint about our identity, our truth, and our direction, and the way we express it. Like that's just something that's always going to be flowing for us. Whereas someone who has, say, openness in both those centers, it's going to kind of come and go. And so the world will have dumped a lot of clutter, say, into the throat or into the G center. and cluttered up those beautifully open spaces in a way that when somebody with that openness, with all that clutter, they go into their identity center, they're trying to connect to their source, and they keep falling over furniture they don't understand and getting hurt, right? And it's about removing the furniture. The furniture is just simply the stories that we've
Yeah.
had to, let our rational intelligence distort enough to let us navigate life when life was potentially overwhelming and fearful, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the little that I read about human design so far, help me out with the wording. I think they mainly say that the process that you're going through is it a deconditioning? Is that what the word is?
That's what human design calls it, deconditioning.
Okay.
But before I had been introduced to human design and working with my clients, I would talk about inner clutter because it's really easy to imagine. You've
Yeah.
got, let's imagine, so there's 9 centers in the human design body graph. And let's just imagine each one is a room in your house, right? Some of those rooms, you were born with them sort of built-in furniture. Some of those rooms, you don't have any furniture. You may have a door or a window, but you might even not have that. And so the most powerful example is when you have an undefined ego center, which is also called the heart or the will. And when you have that empty room, your entire life, everyone who has been in your life has offered to give you a piece of furniture that they think is really helpful to understanding your worth, understanding how to attain material success, understanding how to compete, understanding how to provide for your tribe. So it's like all your relatives donated all their ugliest old furniture.
Yeah.
And,
The hand-me-downs.
yeah, in this room now, you're like 35, and this room is filled with junk, and you don't even turn on the light when you go in anymore. Like, so you're bumping into furniture that has, pokey edges and sharp corners and rats and, spiders everywhere, right?
And
So
then I'm guessing that, that's a good metaphor because if you want to add some of your own beautiful stuff, there's no space for it yet until you clear it out, right?
yes, exactly. But how do you clear it out if you don't turn on the light? And so
Mhm.
human design is what I have discovered to be the most specific, reliable, and accurate way to turn on the light. Because I have worked with a variety of filters over my, 30 years sort of adult career. And
Mhm.
human design is incredibly specific to you, right? I can
Yes.
look at your design and go, oh, you've got that gate, that line, da, 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 da. So it's the most helpful way to find the rooms filled with clutter and to be able to turn on the light and say, okay, where did that ugly armoire come from? Right?
Yeah.
And do I really want it? Like it's right in front of the window. I can't even see the good view, right? So I used to tell my clients, and now even with human design, same idea applies. You can take that armoire and put it out on the sidewalk with a free sign on it.
Yeah.
You can move it to a different part in the room, or you can take it to your backyard and set it on fire. Like, know, you can do anything you want with it, but at least you know that it exists. Therefore, you have a choice. And then, like you said, if you want more space so you can bring in your own furniture, yeah, you get to throw that crap out onto the sidewalk or take it to the backyard and set it on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Hey, so now I'm gonna want to get even more details. So, how would you know um what furniture is actually okay to keep and what's not like gonna vibe with your personality or your type in human design?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So let's stay with the ego center because 65% of people have that undefined. So the vast majority of us are walking around feeling like I'm not enough
Yeah.
on some level or other, whether it's not enough money, not enough success, not enough taking care of the tribe, not enough providing, not enough delivering, right? All that. So, um, how we know which furniture is actually conditioning that enlivens us is we go to our authority, right? And our authority will give us that clear sensation. So, as G center authorities, it's really those 3 questions that we get to ask. Does this make me happy? Ooh, does her armoire make me happy? Not really. Does it let me express my truth? God, no, that is absolutely not my style. Is it taking me in a direction that's right for me? No. Right. So then I know, out you go. Now, how do we discover what stories are behind it? It's kind of optional. Not everybody needs to remember who gave them that furniture, when, and why. Right. For
Yeah.
some people, working through that is very rich and helpful. And for others, it's simply going, oh, yeah, that's ugly. Let's go. Let's get rid of it. Now, let's say you have an emotional authority. You're going to ride that wave up and down until you come to clarity. And when you have neither anxious and fearfulness nor excited happiness, and it's just sort of this calm, like, oh, yeah, okay, it can go. That's when you know that furniture can go. Does that help?
Yeah, that's interesting. My brain is just like hears trigger words and starts thinking of ideas. So what that made me think of is how oftentimes in life, when I know the origin of something, it seems to either explain it better or to rob it of its negative power over me. So maybe that's something that's specific to me, where if someone tells me, oh, it's not always been that way, it started at this specific time, then I go, ah, it doesn't have to be that way forever then. I wasn't born this way. I can change that story.
100%. Well, and I'm going to just click over to your design and look at that because as a self-projected projector, it is our spontaneous sense of truth that we express. So spontaneous expression is about saying, is about naming.
Hmm.
I don't think the story of Rumpelstiltskin really like lights everybody up, right? But
Yeah.
for people for whom that spontaneous realization that's expressed, like Rumpelstiltskin means a lot because the moment she named him, she liberated all of the wealth of her life. Right. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think for some folks, for me, honestly, when I first started coaching, I just assumed everyone needed to like identify their story, name their Rumpelstiltskin, da 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 da. And then I found there are folks who, they really don't need that. It doesn't enliven them. So it's really valuable with human design. Now I can look at their map and go, okay, that makes sense. Like I say, a splenic authority who has no connection to the throat. Maybe they even have undefined mental spaces, right? All they need is that intuitive, like, and that's enough. They don't need to
Yeah.
name it, they don't need to process it. It's just, okay, you know.
Yeah, because really, there's some people talk about intuition and they just say intuition as if it's the same all the time. But I really get that feeling. My intuition says that there's got to be like, there's like five different types, or that there's a different way of knowing something. And that some people just go like, I don't know, just feel it out, man. Use the force, Luke, and you'll just totally know. And then other people are like, I'm sorry, I need some different kind of information here to work with, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it makes total sense. And, I'm looking again at your chart and you do have mental definition. And so having some clarity and some consistent, reliable way of mentally sorting and processing and experiencing your knowings is important for you. It would be like it's part of your gift that you bring to the world, right? And
Hmm.
let's say it's someone, sacral definition generator, maybe just connected to the root and nothing else. It's an uh-huh or an uh-uh, and who cares? The rest is meaningless to them.
Yeah. I have parts of me that envy that, you know what I mean? Or maybe that was something I was conditioned. I thought I had to be like that.
Oh, for sure.
Where I would just be like, man, how cool would that be if you could just kind of like have this, total faith in just what you feel. Whereas now I'm like, I don't know, maybe I can't trust it. Maybe I just need a little bit of, I need to match this information with this, and then when they click together, then I know it's true. I think that's how it works for me.
I agree. There is this appeal to the simplicity of that. And also, then, though, imagine somebody with that specific kind of definition, just root to sacral, when someone says to them, "Well, why did you decide that?" And they're like, "I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know." Well, can you explain yourself? Like, what are your reasons? And they're like, "I don't have any." You know?
Yeah.
And then the sacral can change its mind in
Yeah.
minutes, in hours, and days, and weeks, and years. And suddenly you're like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like, what? So, all of our definitions, all of our authorities, all of our strategies, they have strengths and they have their kryptonite, right? It just,
Hmm.
and again, like you said, we're all conditioned by the world to be the, to not be what we are, but to be what the world says we should be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think what I want to do is go completely backwards from zooming in on all the little details of what human design is.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you can, because I think it's fun sometimes to like start in the weeds and then have all the fun conversations about, like this is what you do in your work, is you talk about all these little details. But if you could zoom out all the way back and do a big picture of, I know, like the next 5 minutes, I know nothing about human design. I don't know at all what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And if you kind of just give like a little intro um, for like the next few minutes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me take one moment because I do have a pretty good, like, spontaneous sense. I think ultimately, regardless of the system you use to discover all the layers and nuances of yourself, the reality at the foundational level that I have experienced is that we are not accidents in any way, shape, or form. That there is something choreographed about existence,
Yeah.
and we can discover how to interpret it or how to connect to it or how to integrate it through a variety of paths and systems, right? And each person is here for their unique purpose to dance in that choreography. And maybe I look at someone else's dance and I say, oh, I wish I could do that, right? But
Hmm.
the reality is to learn to love that I only dance my dance and to learn to respect, even if I can't completely love the dance that someone else is doing and say,
Yeah.
uh-huh, that's your dance. That's you. We're all doing this dance for a purpose that is beyond human comprehension, and to be at peace with that and to actually be comforted by the fact that there is no figuring it out. It's not really our job. We're
Hmm.
here to be the dancers. We're not the choreographers. How's that?
Yeah, I like that. So then, um, maybe I'll say what got you not only interested in human design, because I'm imagining that you started to investigate your own type, which is usually how people start with this stuff. There's no way, I mean, maybe you just went around and you're like, I just really want to find something and help other people, and I'm not gonna look at my own type. I'm not gonna learn anything about myself, and but usually it starts, from you outwards to others, and then you go, oh my gosh, not only is this my type, but it's the exact type that would want to teach human design to others, right? So how did that begin for you?
Yeah, I'll just kind of roll the tape back to when I became a storyteller. For me, the thing that drew me, the power that pulled me, was that I experienced traditional folklore as a reservoir of wisdom that could help us learn about ourselves and therefore be liberated from all the stuff that wasn't ours.
Yeah.
Yet do it from a place of great love for all of the ones that weren't us, to not demonize them or like, make them bad, but to genuinely love the role they played. So that was the really the first major introduction for me to the idea that there is a system that can support individual empowerment, self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love. From that, I moved into the coaching realm and learned about this system called energy leadership. Again, another very useful system, but not specific and unique to
Yeah.
each individual. It's very generalized. I've had some experience with the Enneagram. Again, love it, but it is not unique and it's not specific. And you have to self-diagnose. So, you have to
Right.
self-select what type you are. So again, if your not self is choosing for you, how do you know? So then it was, I started working through the lens of core values, 6 words that capture the most enlivening experiences I can inhabit as a way of guiding me back home to myself. And so I wrote a book called Love Lies Beneath, how reclaiming my, I forget what the tagline is, sorry. Anyway, this book was about the idea that beneath all of the stress, fear, and pain, beneath all of the threatening characters or the hurtful stuff, is this absolute ocean of what can only be called love, as in just wishing for life to be enlivened, right? And so I was doing a podcast based on that work, and I invited a fellow coach on, and she offered to give me some human design information, sort of as an exchange. I said, great. I had no idea what it was. She read the first things about being a projector and specifically about being self-projected.
Yes.
That was it. I was like, oh my God, you have just told me my whole life. Like,
Hmm.
I had no idea. Just to recognize, certainly as projectors, that we are relatively uncommon, being only 22%. As self-projected, we're even less common. So there's really different things about self-projected projectors compared to others. And then my 3/6 profile blew my mind. So
Wow.
learning that immediately transfers for me to, oh, this is incredibly empowering. This is an empowering system for self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love. All right. So, for me, it was always moving from one framework to the next
Yeah.
until I found one that felt like it could be universally applied. And this is the one I found. And so far, in almost 5 years, I haven't found places where it isn't. So, well, who knows? But tomorrow that could change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've gone through a similar, progression because what you do is you're just a curious individual and you go, okay, how I feel like my whole life has been me going, who the heck am I?
Mhm.
And because everyone goes, oh, where do we come from and all of that, who am I? And I'm like, no, but I'm really specifically into the who am I one. I do want to know the meaning of the universe and stuff and like find God and all those like main things. But I'm like, really, I feel like the first step before I can even do that is I have to like find out who I am and then move on, like move forward in life, like on the journey. So then went through all of those things, like where look at the Enneagram and you go, okay, and then you give it a little bit more of a sense of self from it. So and then you build upon it. But then after years go by, I'd be like, wait, I don't know which one of those I am. Am I the five? Am I the nine? Am I the whatever it was? And you go back and forth. Well, I'm a little bit of both. And then the more I would learn about psychology, the more I would learn about, confirmation bias and how you can find ways to prove that you're right, whatever you want to be, like what your personality is. And if you're filling out a quiz yourself, there's so much bias that goes into how you answer questions. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be perceived that way. I don't want to really answer truthfully. Let's a little bit of like fudge the numbers here. And then I'm like, how is that reflecting back to me? I always tried to be as honest as possible, but I go, hey, how do I know there's not an unconscious bias appearing?
Yeah.
And that's why it morphs over time is as I'm changing as a person, then my answers are going to change. So I'm going to get a different reflection of who I am at that moment in my life. So what I liked and where I am right now is getting real deep into the details of a full natal chart, which I
Mhm.
feel is like me, getting closer and closer to the full details of the human design chart. But I really, really loved the idea that since it's based on literally place, minute you're born, there's no arguing with it. There's
Yeah.
no negotiating. There's no like me trying to like avoid anything. It's just this thing where someone just shows it to me as if it's like, here's your fingerprint. Now it's time for you to analyze it. And there's so much information that instead of you going, well, I don't know, am I this one out of, nine types or whatever types it is? And those, I'm not to demonize those. Those actually are valuable and fun. Like I also was into Myers-Briggs for a while and it was
Mhm.
another stage of development. But I really like the idea of, the natal chart or with human design. There's so much to go on that there's no like, oh man, I'm stuck with a really bad personality. You know what I mean? It's so unique that you go, there's actually just infinite cool things to learn about myself, and there's no like, am I a bad guy or a good guy? You know?
100%. And the best part about human design for me is the one of the things I learned first was the guy who introduced it. He changed his name to Rob, but originally his name was Robert. he said, don't believe anything anyone tells you. And that appeals to me a lot because I don't want to just follow blindly because someone told me, right? He said, experience it, witness it, experiment with it, see what you discover for yourself, right? And so anything that gives you permission to have full autonomy over this discovery of your own self, I think is more valuable than things that don't give you that empowerment, right? Um, Also, I just want to say, as a self-projected projector, it is not a surprise that identity and truth are kind of core
Yeah.
themes for you. Because for us defined G centers as well, specifically self-projected, that's our authority. If we don't know who we are, we really don't know the truth. We don't know what's going on in the world. We can't make our way because we absolutely need to be able to connect to the truth of who we are and be able to express it and move in a direction that is right for us. Otherwise, we actually begin to damage our core identity.
Hmm. Yeah, so yeah, maybe go off of that idea that I was saying at the end where I was like there's no uh there's no arguing with it. Like I love the idea that instead of it being like, what do you think that you are? You tell
Right.
me. What you do is you just go send me your information and then you give it back. It reminds me of don't begrudge this metaphor. I just love metaphors. It's like sending in like to 23andMe to go like, I don't know what my DNA is. And it's like this is almost like a form of spiritual psychological DNA. And you are what you are, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Take
I would say definitely kind of energetic DNA, right? Because
yeah.
these are energetic imprints that we receive from the cosmos the moment we emerge, right? And the really interesting layer of human design is that it takes that moment of birth, but then it calculates back 88 when the sun was 88 degrees like earlier, and it gives you your unconscious imprint as well, which is something no one I think has ever thought to do. And again, he didn't think of it. He was, according to his story, all this came as a download through him. And so to know your imprint from the cosmos at the moment you're born, but also this like mysterious underground place within you where you've got this imprint that is definitely moving the currents of your life.
Yeah.
You have no idea why. And that's why often when people first meet human design, they recognize some of the things, if not all, in the conscious. But you'll tell them about the unconscious and they'll be like, I don't think so. And I'll say, well, what do people tell you about that? And they'll go, well, other people tell me that, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
Because your unconscious is sort of what you see in the rear view mirror. So you won't ever see it in the front windshield. Like you're not going to see it on the road in front of you. That's your
Oh yeah.
conscious. But if you look in the rearview mirror, once you learn about this unconscious and all these attributes, you go, I do see that. So it is unique and specific, like to a level and a degree, like not just the fingerprints, but maybe the cellular structure of every
Yeah.
cell that creates the fingerprint. And again, how rich, as a coach, I coached for a number of years without human design. In fact, even after being introduced to human design, I waited for 2 years because I was worried it was a cult.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't some weird cult and some, like you said, confirmation bias, right?
Hmm.
Um, but then lost my train. But then I did feel comfortable. So anyway, before I introduced human design, no, that wasn't it. Oh,
Well, you were talking about the
being
cellular
a coach.
level or okay,
No,
yeah.
being a coach before human design, I had no idea that I was actually coaching my clients to become a self-projected projector with a 3-6
Oh,
profile and a
yeah.
motivation of innocence on the right angle cross of explanation.
Yeah.
And there is when we with self-projected projectors, there is a quality of the ring of truth in what we say, even if we're wrong. If it rings of the truth, people are drawn to that, especially people with an undefined G center. They'll be like, ooh, let me have some of that.
Like you're saying your opinion with such authority that they're like, okay, maybe that's true, right?
Yeah, or you're offering insights or reflections or questions that they go, oh, that feels good, right? But little
Yeah.
did I know that they were an emotional authority, undefined G with an undefined throat. And for me to guide people to come to decisions the way I do turns out to be completely incorrect, right? So for me to now be able to look at someone's chart and say, okay, you're an emotional authority. Here's your decision-making process. Here's your deepest reservoir of wisdom that you want to return to every time, whether it's sacral, emotional, splenic, ego, throat, or whether it's for mental projectors, their ability to sense their environment. And so the specificity of that as a coach is just like, oh, I'm over the moon about that. It's way
Yeah,
more fun for me.
because I feel like it gets all of this like drudge work out of the way, where it would take, several hours for you to ever even deduce what someone's energetic imprint is. And then you go, okay, well, let's not waste time doing that every single time I meet you. You can start off with that information and then begin to work with it.
Yeah, and also knowing, like, for instance, especially the profiles. My clients, anyone who has a fourth line in their profile, they're going to find their way to their own self-realization by sharing story. So they're going to not only want to talk more, it's essential that they get to talk more. Whereas somebody like me with a 3-6 or you with a 1-3, we're going to have a very different relationship to that. Like, I don't know about you as a 1-3, but I would wonder if a 1-3 is like, let's just get the details out on the table and then we'll move on to the discovery. Like, you don't need to spend a lot of time sort of, I don't know. Tell me what you experience, if at all.
Oh yeah, well, give me a situation.
Yeah. So let's say you have a life situation or quote unquote problem
Hmm.
that you want to work your way through. What strategy seems to work the best for you to get you to where you want to be with it?
Well, talking things out usually.
Self-projected projector. We have to speak out loud to hear ourselves, right?
I also like the almost like Socratic dialogue. I really, really like. Let's figure out what we're thinking as we go back and forth. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to answer your question without asking you another question. See, like how I did that. It's just the way things go for me.
Well, it's so interesting because you have the channel of awareness, which goes from the head center to the ajna. It's fully unconscious. It's all about the big questions in life. It's all about exploring the life's mysteries and kind of coming to awareness of what are the really important mysteries of life, the really important questions of life to solve.
Mm,
And that's fully unconscious for you. So it's just kind of some way you're going to be all the time. So
yeah.
you can see how there are just even layers. Like your self-projected projector, we do best when we speak. And I don't know, tell me if this is true for you, but I feel the vibration of the words even more than I hear them, like as far as my sensing, right? But for other, well, that's probably because I'm a lot of individual as well. And individual is acoustic, which is not
Hmm.
just sound, but acoustic is very much vibratory. But yeah, and then there's 1-3 profile, which is like, let's get the foundation, let's investigate the details. When we feel like we're on steady ground, then we can move into discovery. Hmm.
Yeah. Man, I always feel like my unused evil genius power is that I could just ask someone questions until they just fall apart. I would just continue. I could like ask you questions for 5 hours and be like, "How do you know that? Tell me more. Are you sure?" And I could just keep doing that forever, you know?
Well, and it depends on the kind of question, right? Because you actually gave an example of a couple of different kinds. One was very open-ended, empowering, and the other was, "Are you sure?" Right? Like it's like
Yeah.
requiring someone to prove. So questions can be incredibly powerful, right? They can create expansiveness or they can create constriction, depending on where the person is on the other end.
Yeah, wait, that's really, really cool that you said that because that literally is a theory that comes from my training, my background in hypnosis, specifically the way they teach it in NLP, is they talk about there being two different ways that you can filter information for people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm gonna go on my little rant now. I just think that was cool and brought that up is it's the idea of either narrowing information down to get more specific, or taking something specific and then generalizing in a way to get away from it being too narrow. So
Mhm.
there's the way that you can bring someone out of maybe they're stuck in this generalized thing. Let's, everything is terrible. I'm just, everything goes wrong for me. Do you know what I mean? That kind of huge generalization. So what you do is you can help them by going, what specifically is going wrong for you? All the time? Like constantly, every second? And well, no, no. And then you make it a little smaller and you make it more something that they can handle until eventually the that mysterious thing that I was talking about of like the monster in the closet goes away, and then they see, okay, whew, it's not this big overwhelming thing, and you've helped them with it. Then another thing that you can do is you can actually speak in bigger and bigger generalities because you don't know exactly what it is that they need to hear. You want them to fill it in with their truth
Mm.
because you can't know people. You can't really know the full details of someone's mind. So it could be that you could almost say that like I'll start a session and then I'm narrowing things down like to make things more grounded and real. But then I could end a session by the hypnotic part would be me going giving them these big metaphors for them to fill in because I don't know what the answer is for that person. They'll know what the answer is and they'll produce it for themselves. So instead of me going, this is exactly what you're going to do and giving them these like specifics, you know what I mean? You're going to go into your house and you're going to take a sponge and wash off the countertops and that's too much work for me anyway. I want them to do it. So I give them this big general metaphor. And then earlier when I had said confirmation bias was like a trap that you can get caught in, it can also be a gift, a skill that you can use if I don't know exactly what that person wants, I want them to fill it in and confirm some kind of bias for themselves. I'm like, you know what I mean? So I can begin to give them suggestions about, you know what I mean? Like you can allow yourself to become open to the answer that's waiting for you and to wonder what that answer is going to look like and feel like when it comes to you. You know what I mean? So you start giving them this like this vague language pattern that they fill in for you.
You give them a new space to inhabit, right? And really, you give them an opportunity to meet and inhabit a new story,
Yes.
right? And ultimately, that's what storytelling and story taught me 30 some years ago. We're just living the story we believe about ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily all mean conscious belief. We've got these layers and layers of inner clutter that are all the unconscious beliefs we've soaked up. And so when we become aware of our stories and create more room for exploring and experimenting with new story and feel what those new stories feel like in our bodies, right? That's when we can really emerge into our lives. Because really, I just think we're all here for like the tastes, the textures, the smells, the sounds, the colors, the shape. Like, I think we are only here to collect these sensory, chemical, energetic textures and
Yeah.
vibrations for the sake only of collecting them and for no other reason.
Yeah. One of my favorite books of all time has this really good quote. Life is not a mystery to be solved, but a
Mm.
reality to experience.
That's it. We came here, we incarnate, and with human design, I will often talk, a client will say, well, why do I have to have that? And it's like if you share the perspective that there is a universal field of consciousness and we are simply like one aspect of it that emerges. We're never separate, but we emerge like a wave in the ocean. And the wave said, I'm going to be born this exact moment so that I could have all these qualities, right? You are saying yes to all of the textures and feelings and emotions and sensations that moment set you on course for. Like we said yes to life before we got here. So when we can start to understand that we said yes to life at some point, what would it look like if I said yes to life right now?
Yeah.
Mm.
I love that. It's like the perfect way to end it. You're good at this stuff. Okay, our hour is up, so basically I'm just gonna have you kind of like pitch how people can connect with you and learn more, and then
Oh,
that's
thank
it.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
like if I'm interested and I'm like, okay, I still have no idea what they're talking about, and I want to learn more about human design, and I want to get some of this coaching from Zed. How can people do that?
Oh, thanks, Jesse. Well, they can go to my website,
Mhm.
humandesigninsight.com. And actually, the best way to get started is to download the free body graph chart and report
Cool.
because it's going to give you the picture of your design. It's going to then take layer by layer, introduce you to the various concepts, your type, your strategy, your not self theme, your authority, your profile, and then your channels and your gates. And so at first, if you're new to human design, it's going to feel like a fire hose. So I always let people know, just read it so lightly as if you were reading a novel about someone else.
Yeah.
And if there are things that light up for you or sort of like, ooh, that tastes good or whatever, those are the things that want you to come heart to heart with them right now. This is a system, this is a map of you and a way of exploring yourself that you will want to just come heart to heart with over and over again over time. Like I said, it's almost 5 years for me, and I still discover something new when I look at my design.
It's that elephant that you eat one at a time, right? One bite at a time.
And it's the eternal elephant because there are so many layers. And as we move through the spiral of our own experience, we may see what we think is the same point of view, but we're here and not here, or we're here and not there, right? So that's what human design can do. It can provide you a way of looking into the truth of your experience and who you are in a way that's here to enliven and enrich you. And again, they can go to humandesigninsight.com, get that free report, get started. There's a form there on the website as well. You can always reach out with questions. And if people are interested in working one-on-one, it's a lot to take on, but if you want to even check it out, send me a message on that form, or you can simply purchase a session with me there.
Right on. Okay, this was really fun. As usual, I always just feel like I can keep going, but I'm like, all right, got to set some boundaries with other human beings.
I
Until next
understand.
time, if you found that you had like open questions after this, and you're like, oh, okay, now there's fruitful discussion that we could have with Jesse. That's why I kind of cut it off and then go, if you want to come back, then we'll just do another one where we
I totally
chip
appreciate
away.
it. Yeah. And the thing with projectors, especially self-projected, two self-projected projectors, we could probably talk forever because
Yeah.
speaking spontaneously is like our juice, it's like, oh, yummy, yummy. So no, I totally appreciate that and love this conversation. Thank you for taking us into some really interesting, enlivening spaces. It's been very rich, very nourishing, and yeah, I would love to do it again another time.
Right on. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you very much.